In this video, we talk about how to kick the living shit out of your fears.
Brady says, I often find myself feeling like I am less than or beneath my prospects when I am calling them or meeting them to talk about our products. Is there something wrong with me? If not, how do I overcome my timidity?
There's a lot of variations of that question, which get asked a lot of different ways. And a lot of the questions that I get really actually kind of boil down to that, because that is one of the central things that most salespeople, or that a lot of salespeople struggle with. And the other way that could be framed, so that it makes a little more sense for people, if don't use the word timidity much, it's just obviously being timid or intimidated. How do I gain more confidence? And that really is a central question for a lot of salespeople, because they recognize, and think about this for a second, if you had all the confidence in the world, if you didn't have any fear whatsoever, think of the productivity that you could be engaged in, because you would have zero fear or apprehension to pick up the phone and call on anybody, anywhere, at any time, or go to a business and approach people. However it is that you prospect, you would have no apprehension to do what it is that you need to do. And I 100% believe that fear is one of the biggest killers of a successful sales career, or the inability to deal with it. I don't have an answer to your question. You'd have to reach out personally. I'd have to have a conversation with somebody to begin to try to break that down. And by the way, I just want to preface this by saying I am not an expert. I am not trying to pretend to be an expert, because I am not trained in the field of psychology. All I can speak from is my own experience in dealing with other people, and hopefully that can give you some answers. There's a lot of different ways that we could go with this. I think that for a lot of things, I think that a person's perspective, the way that they look at things, I think that the root of a lot of problems, if you look at fear and timidity, that is something that, to me, it's symptomatic of something. This isn't the cause. The problem is not fear. People who deal with this and think that they lack confidence have a tendency to also turn around and think that is who I am. They internalize that and take that on as their very identity, when I think that is a catastrophic mistake, a catastrophic evaluation of the situation to make. And here's why. Because I think that a lot of our problems are rooted in the way that we look at things. I think a lot of it has to do with perspective, beliefs that we have around certain things, and our evaluation of a situation. If we are facing a situation, like, for instance, let's just pick a day-to-day thing that salespeople deal with. Salespeople act like picking up the phone to make a cold call is going to get them killed. Really, there's that level of fear around rejection, around all that stuff that comes along with it. That, in and of itself, is rooted in an incorrect evaluation of the situation. You've come to the wrong conclusion. So this isn't a matter of there's something intrinsically wrong with you that we can't fix. This isn't something that's in your DNA and that can't be altered. This is merely a belief system or a perspective that just needs to be changed. We need to settle down and rationally look at this and come to the right conclusion about what's really happening. So that's one thing. The point of that whole spiel was to say it freaks me out when I hear people internalize this stuff and say this is who I am, because it's not who you are. I used to be timid in a lot of ways until I developed the belief that I could do it, and then all hell broke loose. Literally. Everything opened up for me when I saw that I could. I got pissed off enough and things opened up. And that's the same thing that can happen. And what that was my perspective, how I saw things change. So that's the key, is to know that this can be changed, and it's only happening because of the way that you see things, not because you're a wimp, not because you lack confidence, and not because you're a coward. Don't ever think that. All of us are cowards. When we see things the wrong way and we let fear overtake us, faith is gone, we have no belief, we are by default inevitably going to become cowards. So, one other quick thing to do with perspective is I think that this is symptomatic of an incorrect way that a lot of salespeople look at what it is that they do. I think that for so long, the dominating paradigm in the world of sales that has been passed down through management in a lot of companies is that either you sell the prospect or they sell you on reasons why they shouldn't buy, and what it creates is this win-lose-lose-win scenario. Whereas if you go into that situation, you don't come out with a sale, you lost. I fundamentally, and you can have your own opinions on that. I know that there's a lot of people that have strong opinions on this. I fundamentally believe that is absolutely asinine. Not only just incorrect, I think it's absolutely asinine. If you think that your product or service is the best out there, bar none, and can solve every person's problem pertaining to that, or that every single person you meet with has that problem, I think you're living on a different planet. I'm a big fan. To me, my whole premise in sales is, not my whole premise, but a very foundational belief that I have is that I am only going to do business with people who need what I want. When you hear people say things like, he's such a good salesperson, he could sell ice to Eskimos. That's not selling. That's highlighting, this guy's so good at duping people, he could dupe somebody into buying something from them that they don't need. That's con artistry. That's scam bullshit. And when you are taking money from somebody who doesn't need what you have, that's stealing. That's a scam, and I absolutely abhor that. I think that for most industries, a lot of people you're going to meet with you shouldn't be doing business with. And I wouldn't want to spend time trying to do business with people I shouldn't be doing business with, because that, the long-term cost of that is huge. And so many people are so short-term. They want to get the deal now, and they're under pressure and all that stuff. And so here's what I'm trying to get at with that. If you come into the selling situation and you think that it's your job, that you either win or you lose, that's all there is. You are putting an inordinate amount of pressure on yourself that is I couldn't imagine, it'd be very hard to deal with. And you're setting yourself up to fail because it's unrealistic. But I think one of the things that's been really helpful for me, and one of the reasons that I can have such strong posture with people when I believe in what it is that I'm doing, when I know that I have a solution and you need to look at it, not you need to buy it because I don't know your scenario. This is why I'm able to have the kind of posture that I do when I'm selling, because I fundamentally absolutely believe that you should look at this. If what I'm selling to you is related to whatever it is that you're doing, then you need to look at it. I'm not going to leave you alone until we sit down and look at this. But I'm coming into it letting people know that this may not be a fit. And I'm not going to twist your arm and force you to buy something that doesn't make sense for you to buy. Okay? My perspective is there's two people coming together to look at a problem and evaluate whether or not we should move forward with it. Because if what I have makes sense for you, it's going to benefit you immensely. It's going to benefit me financially immensely. That's why I'm here selling this. But I'm not going to convince somebody to buy something they don't need, because that's setting yourself up for problems down the road. And above all else, it's unethical. The reason that when I call people, I've always been able to say to them, listen, I'm going to tell you this right now. I'm going to call you every 3 days for the next 3 weeks, 3 months, 3 years, however long it takes for you to sit down and take a look at this. Now, I'm saying this to you with the understanding that I am not going to try to convince you to buy my product or service. We're going to look at this and see if it makes sense. But once you have the information you need to make a decision, the ball's in your court. It's totally up to you. If you decide this isn't a fit, or we decide together this isn't a fit, I am not going to try to extract money from you that you shouldn't be giving to me in the first place. Does that make sense? And so by doing that, I tee everything up so that I'm not coming in there. There's not this typical unspoken expectation that this guy's a salesperson and he's gonna try to convince me or coerce me no matter what I say. And I'm gonna have to deal with this fight. Because that's what a lot of people, that's their apprehension in dealing with salespeople, because they understand that's been the mode that's been taught to them for so long, is either you walk out of there with a deal or you lost. And I think that that's very incorrect. So that was a long answer, but I'm trying to give that context to that what I think is a better way. May not be the only way to look at it. Obviously it's not the only way to look at it, but to me it's a better way to look at it, where it eases that burden and makes it so that you're not going to be timid. Because I think that a lot of salespeople, and follow me on this, I think that a lot of salespeople are timid because they are being told by a prospect to dance. Prove to me why it is that I should buy your product or service. And then what does the salesperson do? I have to prove it. I have to answer this correctly. That's a lot of pressure. I don't like to do that. I like to step back and say, maybe you shouldn't. But let's talk about some things, because if you should, then this is going to be very beneficial to you. And if you shouldn't, then there's no sense in us talking further beyond getting to that point where we figure that out. And that completely deflects all that pressure that's being put on you, and that I think a lot of salespeople inevitably put on themselves by thinking that that's what they have to do. So again, this is all perspective stuff. These are all these mental tools that you can use to look at things in a different light that'll hopefully create a different response. Because like I said, I 100% believe that fear and timidity, these are symptoms. These aren't the problem. They're just symptoms. This is, if you do this, if you put this into the computer, into the machine, this is the result it's going to spit out. And that's how we function. I mean, I know the level of posture that I can, and by posture I mean confidence and relentlessness. But I can also tell you right now, without flinching, that if I try to sell something that I don't believe in, I fall apart like a cheap suitcase. And that's how this functions. Belief has to be there. I act like a coward if I had to go out and sell some certain things that I didn't know anything about or that I didn't believe in, and I had to fake it, or I had to go out there to sell this person, regardless of whether or not they should have. I would fall apart. I couldn't function in that environment. And yeah, there's people that can, but I call them con artists, because that's what they're doing. They're faking themselves out. They're faking something. They're bullshitting. Call it what it is. What else came to mind? There was one more thing that came to mind. Probably the most important part that came to mind. It's a big reason why I am such a fan of the book Psycho-Cybernetics by Maxwell Maltz, because it to me showed me how I was able to break out of this. It wasn't theoretical. This to me is not theoretical. It's a 100%, well, I don't know about 100%, but some of the fundamental premises that I talk about and I'm going to talk about, and if you read the book, you'll see, are, to me, they reveal so much of how this mechanism works, how we create desire, how we create beliefs, how our appetites are formed, all these different things that are so fundamental to giving us the motivation to do the things that we need to do and all that. But one of the things that I extracted from this, or that it highlighted to me as to how I was able to change so fast early on, was that you and we can never stop mentally rehearsing things. We are always going to be imagining things. And sales even more so. Situations where there's emotional, what's the word I'm looking for? There's a lot of stuff at stake. We're going to tend to engage in this process of mental rehearsal. And if you and I are not very conscious of imagining and rehearsing ourselves performing well at a high level, we by default are going to imagine ourselves getting the shit kicked out of us. And I know that every one of you who is watching this right now, any of you who is going to watch this, know exactly what I'm talking about. You picture picking up that phone and having that prospect rip your face off, or in the face-to-face meeting, the exact same thing. What does that do? That creates the fear. Why? He says it in this book. Because our nervous system cannot tell the difference between a real experience and one that is imagined vividly. The subconscious cannot tell the difference between a real experience and one that is imagined vividly. So if you're imagining going in there like a dog with his tail between its legs and getting the crap kicked out of you, insofar as your nervous system is concerned, that's a real experience. So what do you think the natural response is going to be to that? So what we have to do is take control of that mechanism and start using it to propel ourselves forward and dismantle fear and use it to stop us from self-sabotage. And so the only way to do that is to imagine yourself performing at a high level successfully. Imagine yourself being able to navigate the selling situation successfully. And again, let me reiterate this. Successfully doesn't mean walking out with a sale. To me, successfully means being able to handle stalls and objections and being able to walk away from it being a no if it doesn't turn out to be a sale. Being able to sell, live to sell another day. That's crucial. You're not taking this on as a loss. So when the prospect says, dance, bitch, basically saying to you, why should I buy your product or service? Why should I give you this time? When you respond to them in a way where you deflect that and you say something like, I don't know if you should, that takes all that pressure and removes it from yourself. So it's knowing these little ways, these principles, because to me, it's the principle of that. He's telling me I need to prove I have nothing to prove. Listen, it may not make sense for us to do business. We may get to some point, along this path of us exploring these options, we may get to a point at which we may say, I don't think it's going to make sense for us to do business together. Are you okay with that? It's things like, because that is actually where I'm functioning from. It may not make sense for us to do business together. And so you take all that pressure and you deflect it. So it's being able to understand certain principles like this, which, I'll unload as much of that as I can, and you can use what makes sense to you, and implement it. But here's the key. Practice it. You have to practice. You have to spend time practicing. Bar none, the biggest single thing that made me transform from being timid and scared, lacking confidence and lacking ability in sales and in public speaking was practicing it. Spending a lot of time practicing in no pressure situations. No pressure. No pressure. Because pressure creates rigidity. Being able to practice in a non-threatening environment, a zero stress environment where it's just you're role playing with yourself. And you're mentally rehearsing, or you're actually verbally rehearsing a sales interview. That is how you're going to be able to do this. And you'll find the more that you do this, the more it starts to come out. You're going to go out into the sales field and you're going to continue to mostly do what you do now. But gradually, the more you do this, boom, I just said what I said in that last sales interview, what I had practiced last night when I was role playing with myself. And it came out naturally. That's how this happens. And not only that, it also gives you the ability to, because remember this, write this down. Tattoo it on your forehead if you have to. Put it on your mirror. The nervous system cannot tell the difference between a real experience and one that's imagined vividly. So if you are practicing that, it's also building in you the belief that you can successfully execute this and navigate around these roadblocks, and it's going to create the desire to want to do it. And what are the two most important things? If you can have all the tactics in the world, you can have all that stuff and go to seminar after seminar and learn the greatest sales systems in the world. But if you don't have an appetite, if you are not obsessed and you don't have the belief that you can do this, you're done. You're absolutely, there's nothing to talk about. You're done. And this is what fires me up so much about this book and that concept, is because that is how this is done. I love the book Think and Grow Rich. That book changed my life at a young age. Desire, chapter 1. Not chapter 1, it's the first thing. Desire, and then belief or faith. How you develop that is what psycho-cybernetics is to me. And this is the way that we do this. The way that we've developed the fear and the timidity is through mental rehearsal. It's the same process is being used, but it's being used against us. We're using it against ourselves. Versus the process of actually practicing. And practicing the right things, doing it over and over again until it becomes internalized. That's how you make this change. So, figure out some of these principles. I have them in the videos. I'm going to be pumping out more of this stuff. Follow along with that. Whoever it is that speaks to you about sales in a way that is fits your style and is ethical, use that stuff and go practice it. Just go practice it. Practice it on the phone. And remember, you don't have to book every call. You don't. Some people, it's just not going to happen. They're not a fit. They're not somebody you should even do business with. But when you know how to do some of these things, you know how to ask the questions, and you go into it knowing, listen, you're starting at this level. You can never make a phone call, go to a sales meeting, and then go to here as far as your income. You can every single time you have an at bat to go up, to increase things. So you never have anything to lose. Don't put so much pressure on yourself. I've said enough. Any questions you have, please email me, comments, reach out. I love to hear how this helps you. Please do that. that means everything to me. So in the comments, tell me how this has helped you, and feel free to email me anytime, because that is the fuel for my fire to be able to make the time to want to do this. So thank you very much for being here. See you on the next one.